What are we turning towards? Because long before we make moral decisions, we make attentional ones. What we notice, what we return to, and what we allow to occupy our hearts in this world. And what does it say in Colossians? Set your minds on things above, not on earthly things. And that's an ongoing practice, right? In our walk of faith, but also just in our general lives. And our instinct is to assume that spiritual growth requires intensity, that we have to go on these extended retreats, that we have to do all of these great big gestures. But our brain is not changed by intensity. It is changed by frequency. Habits are not about how long you do something for, but how often you do it. And we see it with Jesus, right? Jesus had a rhythm of prayer. It wasn't just an occasional occurrence, it was a consistent rhythm of his life. And his intimacy with the Most High was not built out of these intensity spikes. It was just built out of faithful consistency. And our attention is not neutral. It's not. We think we can pour out our attention in all these different places and somehow be absolved of the consequences of that attention. But that's not the case. Attention is moral. Attention is spiritual. Turn my eyes away from worthless things. Preserve my life according to your word. What we look at shapes what we love. And what we attend to shapes what we trust. And there's that scripture from Matthew where Jesus says, where your treasure is, your heart is also. I thought about that this week. I went to go visit family in Texas and had a long trip back to get back home to Missouri. And there was a lot of things I could have did with my time, but I decided to take a little bit of extra energy and drive an extra couple of hours to go place myself at the foot of a mountain, to go immerse myself in nature and God's creation, even just for a moment, to recenter my heart and my spirit. And the truth is, for a lot of us, we make excuses not to do that. When we have an ounce of free time, we run to the nearest beach. We take ourselves to the nearest amusement park, and our idea of grounding and centering ourselves is Disney World or a cruise or a Mexican beach resort. Our idea of relaxing the spirit is entertainment and not stillness, not humility, not surrender. But every moment is an opportunity. And we can take advantage of those opportunities, or we can make excuses for why we didn't. But every action is a vote. And I very easily could have spent an extra day in Texas and driven straight back home, but I would have missed this opportunity to commune and dwell with God, even just for a moment, because that moment is worth it. Jesus had 3 years of active ministry, and it was chaotic and it was busy all the time, right? We read about it in scriptures, and all this stuff is packed in there. And you've got to imagine how hectic life was day in and day out to accomplish all these different things. And yet, Jesus still took the moments to go up the mountains and pray. He still took those moments to commune with God. And to be frank with you, friend, we don't. We make excuses as to why we don't have time instead of grasping the opportunity when it comes. Where your attention goes, your heart follows. And so I've got to ask the question, do you have 2 minutes a day? Do you have 2 minutes a day to turn? Do you have 2 minutes a day to stop scrolling, to stop watching, to stop problem solving, to stop rehearsing in this life and just turn to God? Not as a task, not as a worry, not as another thing on your list, just to dwell with God. And maybe that means to breathe slowly. Maybe that means to whisper softly, "Here I am, Lord." Maybe that just means to sit in awareness of the presence of God. Maybe that means to plant yourself at the base of the mountain, but to sit and to turn back to God, even just for 2 minutes a day. And you see, this as a practice is not impressive because it doesn't require much of us, but it is repeatable because there's no one that doesn't have 2 minutes every single day to hand back to God and just be in his presence. And every time you do this, you are training your brain to notice God's presence, that God's nearness is cultivated, not forced. And we talk about things like discernment, but discernment doesn't appear in crisis. Discernment is revealed in crisis. What you practice in calm determines what you can access under pressure. And guess what? If you haven't practiced it, you cannot access it. And it's the reason why we sit around and we complain about the fact that so many self-proclaimed Christians lack discernment. It's because they've never practiced it. No wonder you can't access it. You've never practiced it. You didn't practice it in the calm, quiet moments. So what makes you think you're going to be able to access it in the chaos of life? Training happens in repetition. So I challenge you to try that 2-minute turn. It doesn't have to be anything magical. It doesn't have to be anything impressive. Just a moment to be near God. And you're not performing in that place, you're practicing presence. Because Jesus doesn't demand your perfection. Jesus invites your attention. So why don't you give it?